When it comes to fog, you need to understand that there is not like this one type of fog. It's literally a spectrum of different thickness of the fog layer, which can occur on the landscape. When the fog will start to build up in the night or in the evening hours, it will build up first as a really tiny, a slim layer, a few feet thick directly over the ground. Because when the clouds are gone and there's no wind, the first thing which happens in the night is that the ground will start cooling, and the cooling ground then cools the air touching that ground. And so then there's this tiny layer of fog which starts building up. The weather setup is right and there's no wind and the night continues to be clear, the fog will start to thicken. And after some time it will build up into a thick layer which can cover whole valleys. And sometimes the fog layer will get so thick that it will cover the whole landscape beneath. If you find yourself in a situation where you have this type of fog, your only chance to see the light is to go somewhere up, like with a drone, or go into the mountains so that you can see over the layer of fog. Because when you stay within this layer of fog, everything will be just gray and dull, which can be nice for some kind of photography, but mostly landscape photography is about nice light situations. So what you want to have is you want to go somewhere up to be over all of this fog. But first, let's talk a little bit more about the fine layers of fog, which will just cover a little bit of the ground. When you have this type of fog, it's the best to go photographing inside of this fog, because then the light can break through and make this wonderful light situations and moody pictures you can get in a landscape with this type of fog. So if you have just this small layer of fog, it will not occur in big cities. It will only occur in flat landscapes or in the center of valleys. What's also important is the right location itself, because this type of fog specifically only builds up in wet surfaces. So you have to go into the moor or other types of wetlands or near a lake or a river where there's so much humidity emitted by this type of ground that this small layer can build up. So when you just see a small amount of fog being forecasted, you have to consider to go to this specific areas to even see the fog. Everything else will not have any fog. As you can see in the next example image, those photos were taken from a little bit higher viewpoint to be over this thickened layer of fog. When the fog starts thickening, it's best to be in this type of hilly landscape where you have a chance to be above this layer of fog. And so you have also to consider this for your photography. If you have a thick layer of fog, that you have to be in a place over the fog to even see it. The third type of fog is not really fog anymore. Consider it as a closed layer of low clouds, because this type of fog can even be over the ground. It cannot touch the ground. There will be gray and it will be really hazy under this layer of fog, but it does not necessarily need to touch the ground. This type of fog is nothing special when you are living in an area with flat land, because you have no chance to be above the fog. So this fog is specifically only good for hilly landscapes or mountain landscapes where you would have a chance to be above this layer of fog when you don't just want to have those moody shots inside of the gray fog. So if you have this thick layer of fog, you have to consider to go up in the mountains or in the hills to be over the fog layer. So when it comes to fog forecasting, it's really important to consider which specific type of fog you will find when you be out there shooting, so that you can prepare and find the right place to shoot your image. The good thing is, in ViewFinder, we added two parameters for fog with which you can forecast which type of fog you will find in a landscape to be prepared where you have to go to take your pictures. The first parameter you should look up when it comes to fog forecast is obviously the parameter fog. The parameter itself works as a template. So if you look up the scale at the top of the map, you can see that when something is totally grayed out, the chance or the probability for fog is less than 1%. And if the map is really much visible, the chance of fog is getting up to 99%. So this parameter works like a template. And there's one thing which is a little bit a difference between Europe and the USA. In Europe, we have this special yellow and red layer because the weather models in Europe are able to tell areas where they are pretty certain that there will be fog. And then those areas will be specially marked as yellow on the map. In the United States, it works a little bit different. There you can see that when there's an area really clear on the map, then the chance for fog in this area is 99%. And we are pretty sure that when you go there, you will find some kind of fog. Now you need to find out which type of fog you can find there. For this reason, you need to switch the parameter from fog to dense fog. The dense fog parameter is a little bit different. It shows places where the fog is so thick that the weather model is detecting it as a type of cloud. So you can see that here is an area in the north of the United States with a thick color overlay on the map. This color overlay indicates that in this area is a dense fog or a layer of really low clouds. The first information you can now draw from that is that if there is an indication for dense fog on the map, you won't find these fine layers of fog I showed in the beginning of the video. No, this would be really dense fog, whereas the landscape totally gray. Or you have to consider this also, it can be just a layer of really low clouds where when you are just staying in some flat land area, you will be just trapped under a layer of gray clouds. So what you can do now, an exclusion procedure. If you look up the areas with forecasted dense fog and compare it to the normal fog parameter, when you just press the button down right corner, you can switch between both parameters. Now I switched and I see that there are areas with a high percentage of forecasted fog, but in the same areas there is no forecast for dense fog. So now I just forecasted areas where I can find thin layers of fog but not dense fog. One of these areas where there is forecasted fog but not dense fog is here in South Carolina, where you can see that there's a high visibility of the map. But if I switch now the parameters, you can see that there is no dense fog forecasted. And the information I can draw from this is that in this area, I will find just a fine layer of fog for the forecasted time period. Let's do another example from Europe. Here you can see Germany at sunrise. And you can see that there is a big area in the southeast of Germany forecasted with a nice amount of fog. And now I switch to the dense fog parameter to compare both parameters to see the areas where the fog will be more dense or where I will find more just fine layers of fog. You can now see that there's a major area of dense fog forecasted. But when I zoom in at the edge of the dense fog, you will always find lighter fog because an area with fog does not have a hard boundary. It's more like starting to build up in some area and then propagating into another area where the fog will get continuously more dense until it reaches some kind of maximum where the dense fog is located. So I can see now here, starting south of Munich, there is fog located, but not dense fog. Just when I go north of Munich, the dense fog will start to appear. From the dense fog parameter, you can draw a second information, not only about the position where the dense fog is located, but also the upper boundary height of this fog layer. So if you take a look at the scale on the top of the map, and we are really sorry, it's not a nice arrangement of numbers when it's in feet, because, well, the weather model calculation are in meters and we translated it into feet, so now the numbers are not really nicely. But you can read at which height the fog layer will be, and hence you can decide which mountaintops you can visit to be above the upper layer of the fog. And also, if you change the background map to outdoors, you can see that there are areas which will be spared out by the fog, because those areas are inside mountain ranges. So if there is a specific area where the dense fog seems not to go there or not to be there, it's important that you consider it could be because it's a mountain range and that this specific mountain range is higher than the height of the fog itself. So you can go into this mountain range to see over the fog. Let's do another example. Now we're here in the southwest of the United States at Los Angeles. And you can now see that here is dense fog forecasted. And you can also see is that this dense fog sticks to the mountain ranges east of the city. So it touches the mountains, but it does not go over the tops of the mountains. So with this information now, you can actually go up into this specific mountain and be over the top of the fog.